Okay. I'm going to call the Star City Council meeting to order. It's Tuesday, August 24th, 2021 at 7 p.m. If I can ask all of you to please stand with me to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For tonight's invocation, we have Bishop Scott Roberts from Star's Fifth Ward Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you come up here to the podium, sir. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Our dear Father, who art in heaven, we are grateful this evening for the opportunity we have to gather as a community where we can come and to counsel one with another. We pray that thy Blessed Spirit will be here this evening, that those who have come to learn and listen and to testify will be able to hear and say those things that they may be understood by all. We're grateful for those who have been elected to serve this community. We pray that their wisdom and understanding will be opened, that their decisions will be sound, and this community will be led forward in a way that is pleasing to this community. We are grateful for thy guidance and thy love, and for our beloved Savior, Jesus Christ. And we say these things in his name, even Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bishop Roberts. Roll call.
Mr. Hershey.
Present.
And Mr. Keys.
Here.
And Miss Salmonson.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Nielsen is traveling, so he will not be here tonight. Okay. We are going to roll into item 4A, which is the public hearing for East Star River Ranch. And there's a couple parts to this. We're only going to hear the rezone. The commercial, the other applications on this, we're going to be tabling indefinitely because we have not received the reports from ITD or ACHD. And when we table these indefinitely, we will be reposting those and renoticing them to the communities. Okay, just so everybody's aware of that. So how do we, Chris, should we table the other part indefinitely now, or do we do it after the first hearing here?
You could, I would probably do it now, then there's no
Okay.
confusion on the record that, unless there's information that's gonna be part of the hearing that might be used in the other ones, I would go ahead and just table them now, and then you'll have a clean hearing on the one application.
Okay. You good, John, with that?
I think either way, I think they could just open the whole hearing now and listen to it and then make a decision on just the rezone if they choose to. I'm just afraid that there's might be some information that comes out of the other applications that they will. It's up to you, Chris, how you want to advise them.
Yeah. I just think for the, and I don't necessarily have a strong preference one way or the other, just
The cleanest way
to
is
be
to
clear, but I
table
think
it?
the cleanest way is just to do the one
Okay,
hearing, just so that we can keep the hearing focused on that one application. And where we, especially where we're tabling to some date into the future, right?
yep,
I'm a little concerned with getting, maybe a couple months down the road or whatever the time period's going to be. And then we come back and somebody tries to say, well, I gave my testimony way back at that last hearing. Will you go back and dig that up and make that part of the record? I like to just keep it clean. And then when we do the other applications, there may be some duplicative testimony at that time, but at least we'll know that
Okay.
that's what we're doing instead of having something tonight that might overlap into other applications that we're really not hearing for a while.
okay, so we'll table those.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
so I have a question. So as I understand our code, if we're going to do a development agreement, that needs to be as part of a rezone, is that correct? I can't do that as part of a preliminary plat, or can I do it with the preliminary plat?
Under the state code, development agreements are done at the time of rezones, or when you're putting a new zone on the property too, I suppose. But if there are parts of this application that you want to have, that you maybe want to hold on to or put in as part of the development agreement, you could use those as, kind of a concept plan or something, which is very typical in a development agreement. You might want to hear what the applicant has to say as far as how they would like the development agreement to look. If we're going to do the development agreement now as part of the rezone application.
And I guess my concern is that if in fact we do the rezone, and if the council adopts the rezone, then we no longer have a vehicle to do a development agreement.
Technically, that's correct.
So,
Yeah, under the way the state code's worded. Yeah,
So-
you have that one time where the city can require the development agreement application is at the time of the rezone.
So I guess what I'm saying is that if we're gonna hear the rezone, then I don't want to table the DA. So,
No, the DA is part of the rezone, so we're gonna keep the
Yeah.
rezone and the DA together.
As I'm reading the agenda, the rezone and the development agreement are the first part, and then the preliminary plat, the conditional use, and the
Private road are all the parts that will be tabled. for a
okay,
later
well,
date.
yeah, the discussion was that we would hear the rezone and table everything else. And I assumed you meant the development agreement with everything else. I'm thinking, I didn't think we could do that.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. We would want to include the development agreement application as part of the rezone.
Thank you.
Okay, are we clear? Okay, so we're going to table East River Ranch's preliminary plat, conditional use, and private road applications indefinitely. And can we do this one in Landon Village at the same time, Chris? Since we're tabling both indefinitely?
Do them separately under separate.
You want to do them separate?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I have a further question. So as I read through the staff report and I read through the letter that it was submitted by the applicant, it looks like there are things that cover the residential portion of this that they want included in the development agreement.
Right, there's a residential portion, I believe, of this
Could,
rezone.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out the best way to manage that.
Yeah, so a couple options. Again, if the residential piece is kind of a concept plan or something, you can still put that as part of this rezone application. To the extent you're controlling the development of the property, even if it's the rezone piece of it. The other part is that once you have a development agreement in place, even if it didn't include the residential at this time, you could, as part of the following applications, you could amend the development agreement at the time with continued with another public hearing, or as part of that public hearing to amend a development agreement that you might be putting in place tonight. You can always amend the development agreement at any time, and that the amendment doesn't have to be part of a specific rezone. So there's that. You could either include some of the residential tonight if you wanted, and if that's what the application or the applicant, is requesting. Or you could just do the development agreement as part of the commercial rezone and then amend the development agreement to include the other uses down the road. And both of those would legally suffice.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions before we move forward? All right, so let's do the tabling of this application here, of those three pieces of this project now.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys,
I make a motion that we table the preliminary plat for East Star Ranch or East Star River Ranch subdivision, conditional use permit for the senior living facility, and the private road application
indefinitely.
indefinitely.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Was that three ayes? Did I hear? Okay, all right. Okay, that motion carries. We're going to open up the public hearing now for East Star River Ranch rezone and development agreement. Just as a reminder, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to ask the council if there's any ex parte contact. The applicant, Mr. Larson, you got 20 minutes to speak. If you take that long, I'm not sure. Hey, by the way, guys, just real quick, just tell the Larsons happy anniversary. They're here on their anniversary tonight doing this. So happy anniversary to you folks. So, then we'll do some public testimony, 3 minutes per person. Those who want to speak for the project, against, and neither for or against the project. The applicant will have about 10 minutes rebuttal. And then the council can ask the applicant and staff questions during that time frame. Then I'll close the public hearing. The council will deliberate, and either a motion is going to be made to approve with conditions, deny, or table the application to a date certain in the future. All right, with that said, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to ask the council if there's any ex parte contact or communication regarding this application.
No, Mr. Mayor.
None.
Okay, hearing none. We'll have Sean actually speak first real quick relating to this application, and then we'll bring you up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just going to give a real quick summary of where we're at. You just tabled part of the application, but the entire application included the rezone development agreement, preliminary plat, conditional use permit, and private street for the entire East Star River Ranch development. We've had to table this application several times as we wait for a response from ACHD and ITD regarding the traffic impact, how we're going to deal with access, the future signal light at Moyle, and issues like that. In the meantime, it was brought to my attention by the applicant that the rezone for the commercial portion of the development was actually something that staff had recommended the applicant bring forth as part of this entire application in order to update the zoning. And what I mean by that is back in 2018, the properties were annexed and rezoned into the city with a C1 zoning designation. At that time, certain uses were allowed within the C1 zone that were discussed at that meeting and were part of the recommendation for, or the motion for approval. However, for some reason, the city chose not to do a development agreement at that time for the rezone. And fast forward to 2020, we changed our zoning ordinance, and some of those uses that were C1 allowed in the C1 kind of changed, and it became conditional use permits within the C1. And so staff's advice was let's change the application at the same time to C2 to allow those uses to kind of be brought back. We'll put those uses specifically in the development agreement or a new development agreement. And then Mr. Larson can move forward with some of his commercial uses while we're continuing to work with ACHC and ITD on the rest of the development. So we're really just kind of cleaning up the zoning is what we're doing on this. Keep in mind that because we're doing a development agreement, there are specific uses we can omit, we can add, pre-approve, so to speak. The applicant is asking for C2 on all the property. Keep in mind that west of Moyle Street and along Heron River, we do want to keep those uses as more of a neighborhood commercial. And so you can specifically condition those uses along that stretch as well. And then finally, within the site plan, if you want to pull that up real fast, Mr. Mayor. The applicant and the within the application in the C or the commercial area, there's these 6 single-family residential lots right here that were designed to provide buffer to the Heron River development. And staff is recommending that if you so choose, you can put those uses in with the development agreement for approval at this time. Also, please keep in mind that all the future subdivision, re-subdivision of the property will be part of that preliminary plat that you have tabled. So right now we're just doing the rezone and the development agreement. So I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions yet, or do you want Mr. Paul to come up?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so in the application, in the letter, there's reference in multiple locations to the final preliminary plat and accompanying plan sheets. I've gotten, in the packet, we had just had the one sheet of, I think, was it 8 sheets for the preliminary plat. And I didn't see necessarily any accompanying plan sheets. And I guess I'm just concerned that there's a bunch of stuff that was asked based on those, and council hasn't seen them yet. So,
Right, because we're only doing the rezone. We're not going to do the preliminary plat. So any details on the preliminary plat will be tabled to a future date.
okay, but there are questions about the development. It was referenced in the section where they're asking for things in a development agreement.
Correct. I tried to, let me see. I tried to highlight in their letter the specific portions of their application letters. Remember, their narrative letter was for the entire development. So I tried to highlight just the pertinent portions of the letter that dealt with the rezone. So I don't know if we want to,
Wait, is it in the, what page is it in the packet?
looks like it's page 20
Oh, okay.
or page 9.
Oh, right here.
Starting on page 19. Where it talks about the rezone, and then page 20. I highlighted just the portion of the application that has to do with the commercial rezone. And then the next page has the specific uses that are being discussed. But yeah, I guess anything else in the narrative that talks about the plat, we're going to leave for a future date. Does that answer your question, Mr. Keys?
Well,
Councilmember
yeah,
Keys?
it does, except to the extent that we have to consider things for the development agreement. So that's my concern. So for instance, it mentions area B and area C, and I have nothing in front of me that tells me what area B and area C are.
Gotcha.
So,
And maybe Paul can discuss that when he's up here for you, and you can ask that question.
and there's discussion about a future trail system, but I have nothing in front of me that tells me where that would be. So those are my questions. So.
Okay. We good, Sean? You good?
Yeah, I mean, we can go through the letter if you want, but.
Well, we could have Paul come
I
up here.
tried to pick out the important things that were part of the rezone only. So the pathways and everything like that, that's part of the residential portion. But I guess we can just go back and forth with questions, or maybe the applicant can address some of those, and we'll
All right, Paul, your turn,
back around.
sir. You just state your name and address, please.
My name is Paul Larson. I live at 855 South Calhoun Place here in Star. I just want to start off by saying this has been a long haul getting to this point. It's taken over 2 years, and we've had multiple applications postponed due to either local elections, COVID-19, or most recently the many delays from our traffic studies, if you will, what they've imposed with ACHD and ITD. Tonight I've got Tim Tyree here, who helped me with our development agreement. So if you have any questions, we can ask him to join in. I'd like to begin by mentioning that we've had a couple neighborhood meetings now, and we've had great turnouts. In fact, many of our neighbors walk down Wild Branch and Calhoun streets daily. We discussed any concerns that any of the neighbors had, and really the only concern that we received from one of the neighbors was on the property that backs the commercial property, Heron River, one of the neighbors at Heron River, and they just asked us if we could hold off and not do two-story buildings there. And we said that we had no problem with that. I think the overall opinion of our development was very positive. In the process, for those that will remember, there was a lot of discussion and some struggles when the apartments were approved to the east of us, and the Heron River residents were really concerned that the Wild Branch would just run traffic right into the Heron River subdivision. So with the mayor and I and a few others, we discussed a few alternatives, and so we came up with the road system that comes in sweeps.
Hang on, Paul. Sean, do you still have the clicker? You want to give it to Paul so he can point?
Right here. So this road right here, and it kind of swings around, and now we have a stop sign right here, which comes out. It's Wild Branch, which is eastbound coming out of Heron River. And that's why we put those 6 single-family residences, which are roughly the same size lots as what their Heron River lot sizes are. So that was one of the big things that they were extremely happy. The neighbors were really happy about, that we created that buffer. And then in the meantime, I shouldn't say we, I was, I guess, a small part of it, but really our mayor was very influential in getting a light approved at that Moyle intersection, which has been a long haul getting to this point, and much appreciated. The only issue that we had at those neighborhood meetings, which was pretty interesting, is that they were questioning us as how soon we're going to have some retail and commercial out there. They want restaurants, and a few of them even wanted our gas station with it, which I thought was great. This evening, we are here for basically 1/3 of our site. I reference this as the other 2/3. Let me just go back. I think it's appropriate at this time to share a little bit of history, since not all of you were here. Back in June 13th of 2017 and August 28th of 2017, we had pre-application meetings with Kathy Ward. At the second pre-application meeting, we discussed if the former Laraway properties, which were zoned C1 and LO, needed to be part of our upcoming application, which were these properties right here. They were already zoned C1 and LO, and it was confirmed by Kathy Ward and the mayor at the time that the current zoning of C1 and LO with the development agreement was enforced, as it matched at that time the city master plan. We then had our neighborhood meeting on.
Hey, Mr. Paul, can you pull that microphone closer to your mouth so the people online? There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
We then had our neighborhood meeting on January 23rd, 2018, which I might add was very positive. Moving on to April 3rd, 2018, which was our hearing that we had for these two annex properties here, which was right here, and where I live right here, this property. We annexed 9.4 acres off of Highway 44 and South Moyle Road, and 24 acres into the city of Star. Prior to that public hearing, we had a very uncomfortable situation being next to the TJ Anksman apartment development and all the backlash that occurred because of it. I think a few of you might remember that. We proceeded to have our neighborhood meeting, which we were really surprised because we had the opposite experience that we thought we would have. The neighbors, once they knew that we had no affiliation with the apartments or TJ, we had a very good meeting at that point. And then Kathy Ward helped us with our application and gave us a lot of direction on what to do and not to do regarding our application. And at that point in time, she strongly advised us not to include a development agreement as part of our application because of the backlash, I believe, of the TJ Anksman project. My engineer and I were concerned about this, but we were reassured that once we obtained our zoning, we would be guaranteed those zoning uses and total unit counts for the residential. We complied with her request and submitted our application without a development agreement. At our public hearing, we discussed some of the uses, one being a gas station and other retail uses. I believe we had only one opposing neighbor object to the gas station, and we told them that we would not be building it next to the Heron River homes, which were right in this area. And this is now where our gas station is. We explained that that's where it would be. I believe that we discussed the potential of a coffee shop on South Moyle and Highway 44 next to Heron River at this time as well. And I think it was Councilman Nelson, which he's not here right now, asked why there was not a development agreement, because the city was requiring concessions on our part. But it never got legs and went anywhere. Other than that, there were no real objections with our proposed development. I refer to those meeting minutes I think you probably have those. At that meeting, we agreed to modify our application and noted some changes requested by the city council, including a change from R12 or 288 units on this site right here to R8 or 192 units, with the understanding that we could request the addition of a retirement home on the 24-acre site. We received a unanimous vote from council at that time. So based on the historic information I just presented, I'm requesting that the original uses of the April 2018 public hearing be grandfathered back to the original hearing date, as well as the original 2011 zoning approvals for the C1 and LO. I know that we're here for zoning, but I wanted to let you know that my position is that we already had all this approved once. My mistake was following Kathy Ward, who was at that time the zoning coordinator. And I believe that some things were imposed on us that only could be done if there was a development agreement. So I would just like for you to think about that. We're more than welcome to do the rezone to zone 2, C2, with conditions, and we can have all the same original C1 approved items, which if you look at the old C1, every one of those uses, restaurant, car wash, gas stations, were all approved, permitted approved uses for C1, including single family residences. And so all those things that we're asking for right now were already granted to us at one point in time. Unfortunately, when we were going back in March of 2020, we had our neighborhood meeting scheduled, and we were asked by the city to retract our neighborhood meeting because of COVID-19. And we would have had our application in actually prior to that April month that all those things happened in the city, which imposed ITD restrictions and also the zoning changes that you made in April of 2020. And so my hope is that you can look at where we've been and where we're at this point. To be honest, all we really should be doing with our whole project right now is 2 conditional use permits and 2 plats. That's all we really need to do if we had all of our original zoning that we requested back in 2018. Any questions?
Sorry, any questions of Mr.
Yeah.
Larson?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Keys?
So you mentioned those 6 residential lots are roughly the same size as the residential lots in Heron River.
The ones right next door, yeah.
Yeah. On the exhibit that was given to council, it said that those were single family attached,
Single family homes.
but are they attached or detached?
They're detached.
Okay,
Single-
our note says attached.
Oh, they're detached. I have 6 homes that are going to go in there on 6 lots that match the Heron River. We've even talked to some of the people at Heron River to see if we could maybe annex those into that subdivision as well.
Okay.
That's a future discussion, not for here.
Okay. And then let's see, I had a couple other questions here.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, so there was mention of a walking path in the documents. Is that, where is that on this map?
Where was approved, where we talked about it in 2018 was roughly in this area. The walking path will actually run right through here and then go down this walking path here and then under the highway.
So it's not part of the rezone?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. I
But
have
it
for
doesn't
this
quite
one.
take you to Heron River because Heron River's path stops right there. So the hope is that at some point in time.
Right, so tonight we're just looking at the rezone for sheets 3 and 2 for what you have right there, right? Back to what you wanted to do originally. Is that correct?
Say that again, please.
Sheets 2 and, I'm the control of this clicker, so sorry, I clicked off the wrong thing. We're just talking about the commercial components on this on sheets 2 and 3 tonight for the rezone,
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
right? I don't. Oh, in the packet, you mean? Oh, well, that's what I was trying to get back down to here, okay. This one? Oh, so that
They're
is Sean's.
attached to the dirt.
They're attached to dirt. That's Sean's mistake. Those are detached, correct. Okay? So we're looking at doing neighborhood commercial uses here along Huron River, right? That we approved before. Your gas stations over here and the rest of them that fall under the C2 zoning code, right? Is that how I understand this? Yes, okay. All right. Any further questions of,
Mr. Mayor, one more question.
okay,
So if we just put in the development agreement that we're going to, for this parcel, just honor the conditions that were in the 2018 code for C1, would we be done here? Is that all you're asking for?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
okay, any further questions of Mr. Larson?
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman,
So I noticed that storage units are included in one of them, or C2. Is your intention to include storage units? Can we put that as in the development agreement that, well,
to exclude them?
yes,
Yes, you can.
exactly. Okay.
Negotiate, you could put that in there.
All right, and then the other one is a church. I know this is prime, commercial real estate. Is there any plan for a church to go in that area?
I've only talked to a gas station operator, a coffee shop, and a couple restaurants.
Okay,
So there's no plans for a church. That hasn't,
okay,
I mean, everything that's in that zoning approval, I mean, we'd be open for at this point.
right, okay. And then when you had your neighborhood meetings, was there any discussion about, because I believe a pawn shop is also allowed. Was there any discussion around that concern? Okay,
The only thing that was discussed was the height of the actual two parcels that back the Heron River homes. They didn't want to have two-story buildings up there, and I said, I
okay.
totally understand that, so.
And then that neighborhood commercial, that would be not, drive-throughs wouldn't be part of that little section?
Well, it would, because it was approved before for a drive-through, and we originally talked about a coffee shop right there on the corner, and that would have to have a drive-through.
Okay,
So those are C1 and C approved uses anyway.
okay. And was there any pushback in the neighborhood meetings for that?
Not that I
might
won't aware of,
remember?
no.
Okay. Okay,
They just wanted it, so
okay.
they just want something so they can walk. So many people walk anymore, and they just want a place that they can walk and
Right.
get a burger, I guess.
Yeah.
I think-
And I guess maybe for my understanding that the property up at the north does that
Oh.
back up right to, are there homes right behind that frontage area?
Right here,
Yes,
there's homes here
Yeah.
yes.
okay.
on both sides.
No, I've talked to quite a few of those neighbors,
Okay.
so yes.
You know, and I just, Miss Jennifer, I do recall that, I think there was a gentleman that lived here when he was talking about the gas station. He didn't want it right next to their place, and that's why Paul's moving it
Moved
across
it.
the street from Moyle, I think.
That was back in 2018.
In 2018, correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Keys?
Yeah, I did review actually the minutes of the April 3rd meeting. And that was, the specific request was that the gas station not be west of Moyle, but it's in this, what we're looking at, it's not. We also are in receipt of a letter from Barron Properties, and they've asked for some specific things to be included in this development agreement. Is the applicant, have you seen those? Do you have any objection to any of those?
I have seen it. I don't agree with those because we don't have our ITD or ACHD reports yet. So we don't even know where, property to give up would be based on the traffic study yet. We have an idea, but we don't even have that information. So I think it's a little premature. And I think we're definitely willing to discuss that part of it, but I don't know that we have enough information yet to make those decisions.
Well, so let me ask you this then, on the right of way, we'll have to have the right of way for the Moyle light. I mean, there's no question about that. in order to do it.
We know that. We know that there's going to be some more land taken from us, but we don't know how much yet. Because we
No,
don't
but
know
I
if
think,
it's,
I think if we just say in there that we contribute the necessary right of way.
oh yeah, we're
provided it
totally
says.
willing to do that. We're totally willing to participate in the light, the secondary access, everything that is currently in discussion. But trust me, it's very much currently still in discussion.
Yes,
And if we can get ITD to respond, I mean, this is
it's painful.
painful. And I think that hopefully you guys think a little bit about this because this is going to keep going on, it sounds like. I don't know if there's something else you can do to approve some of these subject to. I know that that's not your policy now, but it's painful. I mean, it's cost us a lot of money and time I mean, a lot of money and time just because of their delays. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so speaking of ITD and ACHD, have they accepted your TIS?
yes.
They have.
Oh, yeah, back in April.
Okay.
Our second round of TIS, mind you.
Okay.
And that's times two. And you know, each one of those are $40,000,
Right.
$50,000 a pop. So,
Any further questions of Mr. Larson here?
Not until I can think of more.
I'm sure you will.
Mr. Mayor and Council, before Paul sits down, in my staff report, I did bring up a concern about the storage facilities, which I believe Councilwoman brought up. After I did that report, I did talk to Mr. Larson. And I think he wanted to propose, rather than prohibiting those outright, is to make those a conditional use permit. That way it doesn't completely knock it off the board.
and I think that's justified based on what I know right now from the ITD report that we just got. They're trying, I mean, you guys are very much aware of it. They're imposing close to $9 million in cost to our site. And if
So
that's
that's
really going to happen, which I don't
Change. That's actually changing.
because that would say the only thing we could do is do storage units. And then we get Mike Moyle across the street all ticked off at us.
Well, not only that, but it eats up all the restaurants that everybody wants.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
You know,
That's why I'm not, I don't
Administration.
really want to do it, but
I-
having that option to do a conditional use permit at least down the road, because who knows what'll happen.
I would prefer to say no storage units completely and continue to work with IT to get what we need to get done to benefit you. I mean, I am a firm believer that there's never a no answer from them and we can always get a good answer for all of
Okay.
us. The other thing is anything that is a nonprofit style facility, when she brought this up, I am not interested in eating up all of our commercial with anything that's nonprofit, whether it be a church or a hospital that's a nonprofit, because then that just continues to bear the burden of all the services on the existing taxpayer. And that's my problem with the nonprofit status that we have on some of these hospitals and stuff we have in our valley. Right. And those are the kind of things that concern me about going into a prime commercial real estate like this, you know, so.
All right.
But your gas station, I like that. It looks good in the picture.
Oh, you're
Did you
gonna-
want to talk about that at all?
The only thing, and I can't remember if we put it on there, we're going to have a mid height at 35 feet, but we want to be able to put a cupola on top. And so that's going to be, I can't even, how, is it 54 feet, I think? So we meet the current code on the main roof, but the cupola is going to stick
Which is this right here,
Yeah.
for those that are not aware.
And it's an uninhabited portion of the structure.
Except for
So,
what birds, maybe.
yeah, so the actual structure itself meets the 35-foot height requirement. So if you choose, you could put that in the development agreement to allow the cupola
I think it needs to be in the development agreement.
be-
if-
to
If you
be-
guys choose to
to
allow that.
extend that height for that
Yeah.
part of the structure only.
Any concerns about that? Questions of,
the cupola?
yeah.
No, I just want to know if we can condition to make the gas less than $4 a gallon.
Did you hear that, Paul?
What was that? Yes?
Actually, I want less than $3 a gallon gas there. But David said less than 4. Any further questions of Mr. Larson at this time before I
Oh,
open it up?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
just one thought.
hey, one sec. Let's have Paul. Paul, go ahead, Paul.
In the proposed development agreement, which I think we're still working on, it actually has the mid-level roof shall be 42 feet, which I think just about gets us there, but that's what's written in here. But right now, the current design is we got a 35-foot mid at the upper roof portion, and the cupola would stick up well above that. 54, 55 feet, whatever. I can't read it on there, so. 54?
And that's, again, I think as council, you need to decide and put that in the development agreement, in my opinion.
54 3/4. So yeah,
Yeah,
maximum
54.
55, I think, just to round it up.
Mayor
Okay.
Chadwick,
Councilwoman?
Yeah, so another question about the cupola. So I've seen the one on Eagle Road, the Fast Eddie's, nice building, but it's gigantic. And can you give me like an idea of how, do you know which one I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Like how tall is that? Because that's just a single story, I believe, and they have the big, is it, or they have offices up on top and then the big peak?
I don't know the height of Steve's building, but it's got to be taller than what I'm building. Because I'm meeting mid-level's 35 feet on the main roof, and we're just sticking up above that with a cupola. So I can't imagine it being as high as
Like
his.
that, okay.
But if you look at it, I mean, just look at that, it's symmetrically, I think it looks totally fine. But if you don't want it on there, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, as for the record, the midpoint is 35 feet, the roof peak is 41 foot 6 inches, and then the cupola peak is the 54 feet 3.5 inches.
And the mid-roof is what you measure from,
Mid-
to,
the
for the
mid-roof is what we-
35-foot
what we
height
determine
ordinance,
our height.
Okay,
just so you're aware.
okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so in general, frankly, I think it's a good looking building with that cupola on there, but, I'd love to hear what these people think about it too. I know they don't get a vote. We're the ones who vote, but love to hear some community input into this as well.
Well, if they choose to
Um,
speak, you'll hear it.
I know. And on that note,
What?
um,
This way?
Down.
I think I'm going to hold the rest of my questions until after we get public testimony.
Okay. Any further questions of the applicant at this time? No? Okay. Thank you, sir. So I had I have about 12 people sign up, but no one that wanted to speak. So I'm going to ask for Councilman Keys' sake, if anybody would like to speak that has signed up on here. Go ahead, sir. Come up here and state your name and address there, please, for the record. And we got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm Jeff Riggs from Barron Properties. My address is 1401 17th Street in Denver, Colorado. For those of you in the audience that don't know me, our firm purchased the property from TJ in the spring of this year. So we have been working with Paul for at least a year before we purchased the property with TJ. We first met him at least a year ago. Council members, we sent a letter yesterday in support of Paul's plan. And I thought it appropriate to stand up here again tonight and say, we are supportive of the plan to move the zoning, from C1 to C2. And we're supportive of the plans that Paul has for this commercial property. As you could see in the letter, we think that as you work on this development agreement, that it would be appropriate to consider dealing with the funding and the timing on the light at Moyle. We think it's a critical part of our overall neighborhood development to get that light in as soon as we can. And so we would ask that as you consider the development agreement, that you put this in as a condition of the approval of the development plan. Part of what Barron Properties has done to work with Paul is that we funded half of the at least second traffic study that Paul did because, as was I think required through part of our process, I think it's appropriate to look at our whole neighborhood, not just Paul's commercial or our 196 units of apartments, which we will start here in the next 45 days or so. So what we're asking the council to consider is that you deal with timing for construction of the light. That we believe is the most important thing for our neighborhood. We think, and we're happy to be part of the STAR community now and learning about the process of how we work our way through this. But it would seem to me that if you folks are going to work through a development agreement, now would be the time to put in some of the requirements for timing on these things. Again, we think Paul's plan is a good one. We're in support of it. The uses and through our discussions and many meetings we've had, we're in support of this plan. But we'll hope that you would consider reflecting on the comments we made in our letter of support, which you got yesterday.
Perfect,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just real quick for the record for everybody, I believe you guys are in, you have to pay 35% of that light, correct?
Yes,
For the
we're
agreement.
ready to go
Right.
with that right now, Mayor.
Okay.
We'll stand with Paul in terms of the process of getting it engineered. We have the capacity. We have local people here that can assist and work closely with Paul to help drive the design of that so that we could expedite that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak? That signed up? I don't bite, I promise. Okay, all right. So Dana, did we have anybody sign up online? No, okay. So that's all that signed up to speak then. Mr. Paul, you want to come back up here, sir? And just real quick, and we'll put this in the minutes, but we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the folks sign up for it. 2 were uncommitted and 1 didn't mark either way, so. Okay, Paul. Go ahead, sir.
With regards to, I think what we just heard, I just want to understand that we're all on the same page here. We want to, storage units as a CUP will be prohibited. Is that correct?
I would prefer not to see any storage units.
Okay. Once again, the residential lot says single family attached. We'd like to have you honor the 2018 C1 conditions of approval. We will dedicate right away for a light, and we will not put a church.
So just so for the record, I'm not against the church, as I promised. It's just, we're not rich in commercial, and if we eat up all of our commercial with non-tax
This location
entities, it
doesn't
hurts
fit for a church, I
tremendously,
don't-
right? But we do also need to talk about that, the share of the light too for Mr. Larson. We got to figure that out as well. I'm not sure if you guys have talked about and tried to figure that out.
We've talked about it. It's in the development agreement, but I think it's still a work in progress. I think Sean and I have talked a little bit about the different percentages, but we're more than willing to participate. We've always said that. We need it. It's the order of when it gets paid that still needs to be discussed. And that has a lot to do with when our whole development gets approved, because that's how we pay for it. It's not just through the commercial, that's just a portion of it. So it's got to be the whole thing. And I think we need a little more time, but we're totally on the same page. Jeff and I have worked together for quite some time, and we are sharing the costs in that second traffic study that has just been completed.
Any questions here right now or comments to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so I just want to clarify that per communication from staff earlier, we are not talking about the development agreement that came across our mail. We are starting from scratch and negotiating conditions for a development agreement this evening. We're beginning that process.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, Sean? Yes, thank you. Okay.
Right.
So you guys, so let's talk about this percentage. We got to figure out the percentage. First of all, we made TJ do 35% on his properties over there. We have properties across the street at Moyle that'll come into play at some point, and a future application that you guys will hear that we table tonight too that'll come into play. So we got to look at a percentage that we expect Paul to pay for his properties over here. So you guys need to discuss that and negotiate that. Because we need to put that in the development agreement, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to sit them down until we talk about that, though. No offense. I know I'm standing the whole time either. Well, couldn't we just figure out about what properties are coming in and what percentage is owed by who, and just condition it as to when it comes across us is when do they have to pay? Is that possible? Or does it have to go when the light goes in? It has to all be up front.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
I have no idea what I just said. What I'm saying is the light's going to come in eventually. There's a date certain for that.
Right.
What triggers it? like how the Heron River triggered the light we just got. It was a certain amount of build that took place.
Well, so that light can go in now.
Okay, so that,
It needs to go in right away. The thing with, like the Heron River, that was all, based on a number of bills
Right,
and
okay,
paid for
so-
by developers. So these, ITD will not be paying for any of this light. This is all on the development community and ourselves to make sure that this is taken care of.
so this light's gonna be paid for by those that develop around it, as we know.
Right.
And you said there's other properties across the street that would also contribute to the share of this. The only one that has a definitive amount is Barron Properties now.
Correct.
Well, that is a pickle. Because it's upfront money, and just like Mr. Larson stated, money comes from the building.
Right. Did you guys, Mr. Paul, find out what the cost was of that light? Or did we even find out from ITD what their footprint's gonna be when they do that 5-lane?
That's the big concern right now is where to put all of the
The
signals.
utility
Yeah,
part
we
of that?
just don't, and how much.
Okay.
I don't know. I would say, this, once again, this is only a third of what I'm trying to talk to you about tonight. The real money, as far as I'm concerned, comes from our townhouse, and future housing development. And so we might want to do a little more study. I know that we don't even have an ACHD report yet, so we don't know what they're requiring. We not only have the light and the signal to deal with, we have a secondary access, and we have the collector road that we've got to deal with, which was turned over to ACHD as I don't even think it was a completely approved road yet. It's just, so there's 3 things here that we got to look at, but I don't know that we're totally.
But this goes back to Councilman Key's earlier question. If we're starting a development agreement now, are we able to leave the development agreement open so we can add to it when we hear the townhouse portion of this?
That's what I'd recommend, is that we amend you can approve it tonight, and then we can amend it as part of that future.
But include in there that there's a percentage that we would have to put in there? I mean, the percentage are gonna be, don't we have to put it in the development, or we could just amend the development agreement?
Do you mean put a percentage in now for what we're approving now and amend it later for the whole thing?
Well, no, I'm just thinking, we're just saying that there's gonna be a percentage required of some sort,
Yeah,
right?
But we
in
don't
the-
know what
in
that
the
is.
Development agreement.
You could put up to a certain percentage,
Yeah,
and then once we get further along, we can determine, there's still a lot of steps we've got to make with ITD and ACHD on.
and Sean, you mentioned up to percentage of the
Improvements.
total cost of the light, correct?
Correct.
right.
Okay,
And so
thank
like the Barron Group has a commitment of 35% of the total cost of that light.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys,
so if we come up with a commitment to build 85% of the light, now what?
85% of the light?
Yeah, so what if we don't have the other 15% paid for? Or some other?
Well, we're gonna have to,
percentage?
we'll have to
Where's
figure that
coming
out.
from? Okay.
Yeah,
And-
we'll have to figure it out.
I also know Mr. Moyle, the property owner across the street, has actually requested that we work with IT to get this light built. Has anybody approached him?
Yes,
about,
and when we
about
have,
Kicking in?
yes, again, it's when the development properties come up for development that they're gonna be paying their share of it.
Well, he was talking about, he wants the light in
I
order
know.
to service his existing storage units.
So we haven't discussed about his existing stuff.
Right, and what
But
I'm,
we've talked about the other open spaces that he has that are going to benefit from that light.
so has anybody talked to him about voluntarily?
No, we have not.
Contributing to
I'll
this?
just answer your question, no.
Okay. Because
No.
I think somebody should.
But we should, but that still doesn't, we still just figure out what the cost is across the street
Yeah.
compared to here. Is it 35% for Paul, just like it is for Barron Group, and then the other 30% comes out of Moyle and the other people's pocket? I mean, we just got to come up with a number, right?
That kind of risky.
That's kind of risky.
35%, you're responsible for.
Well, we
30
have roughly 113 acres that we're dealing with on south of State Street. They have about the same. And if you add their,
Well,
if you add their
just-
storage units and all that on top of it, they got a lot more.
I don't know if they have 113 acres of undeveloped property over there, because there's some that's already committed to developments that we have not added any lights to.
It's 113 plus, I think they have 5 acres for Joe and another 7 or 9 acres for Mike. I'm not including, so.
I mean, we did, was it 19 acres? How many acres for Barron?
20
20 acres at 35%? How many acres do you have here total? 27 acres?
26,
26
27.
acres? 26. How many acres do you have?
52,
52.
plus we have the Crystal Springs, which is another 35 acres.
So, I mean,
Pull up Google Earth.
huh?
You pull up Google Earth. I mean, we're talking land here. I want to just take a visual.
Can I suggest that, I don't know
Sure,
that
you
we're
can-
totally prepared to say that we accept whatever you tell us. But I think that when you see us next time, that's the time that it really matters. But
But
we
I think-
agree to a percentage. We just don't know what that is.
So do we put it in as a condition of approval? Chris, how do we do this? I mean,
And this is
here's the
changeable.
issue. Paul's in this perfect storm right now, and I feel bad for you right now.
Oh, it's
Because
fun.
we approved something and then we changed our code, and on the same time, we have agencies that can't get us the documentation for us to hear his entire project. But yet we have a development agreement that's open now with the rezone that I'm not convinced that we're gonna be able to reopen it on our side without them voluntarily doing it in the
Well,
future. for
well, he
the other
has,
three.
you're rezoning the LO to
He already did that,
conditional,
right?
aren't you, in the middle?
We
So
don't
that-
have another
Well-
rezone, do we?
Once again, my LO was grandfathered in back in 2011, or 2011 is when that zoning and a DA was approved. And everything that am asking for in my upcoming is a conditional use approved. So I don't really need to even rezone that. Right now, we were going to, but
Right.
we don't need to. All right.
You do, because
So-
you're asking for residential.
Well, the LO, the original LO, it's approved. It's a conditional use.
So.
No, that's a DA. That's back in 2011. The original LO is grandfathered
Yeah,
in.
but you see where I'm at with this?
Yeah, but how's this sound? This is. Mr. Larson is amenable to a percentage that we say. As long as we can leave that flexible to where when we get everything, we'll have a better understanding. Where that is changeable up or down as necessary to be as fair as possible. I'm certain we could say it that way.
Except we need a number.
Yeah, we need a number.
So I'm just going to throw this out there, spitballing again. So if Crystal Springs, I believe, was approved for 192 units, you're asking for 266 residential. So if we took 266 of 192 times 35%, would that be a fair percentage?
So what percent?
48?
It's
No.
cycle math. We got to figure that out.
We got the lights north of it. What about them?
That's the
I mean,
thing.
they've got to pay
At a minimum, 35%.
at a minimum.
I think
For us, I would say 35, but let's, Dave, what he said, I think I'm totally fine with, because we don't know where we're at yet on everything. We don't know what Moyle's going to pay. What if,
We don't know. You're right. We don't know, but could this be something where the city jumps in, he does 35%, they do 35, we pay the other 30. When the Moyle properties come in for development, we go out, we.
That was
require them
my
to pay
next
that.
suggestion, actually. But it.
You know what I mean?
To throw in a hard number, though.
That's a percentage.
Yeah, well, the percentage, Councilman Keys, you said about 48% and 35%. Since you hate churches, I'm not going to bring it up to you. But if we could go back to the good old Book of Kings and take good Solomon, split the baby up. Not literally, but how about we just say about 40% and then, but like I said, it's adjustable. Up to, about no lower than.
No more than.
Yeah.
See,
For
that's
now,
where-
but yeah, it's flexible, yes, understandable. But we're putting some kind of condition in there saying that, yes, they owe for this light, and best guess right now, about 48% on the high side. And that's an up to, but when the full development agreement, when the full packet comes before us and these tabled properties come before us, we'll have a much better understanding what we're looking at, and more time will have passed to where they will have more of these studies done.
I would hope.
And
but-
you could also have had engaged in conversation with any property owner across the street to say, hey, we're looking at
But I would think-
establishing a percentage for you.
Sure, I think it's no more than 35,
I'm fine with any number.
in my opinion, with that, because that gives you 30% for the acreage across the street.
Also keep in mind you have land and,
And Land and
and
Village,
a couple
another
other
piece.
parcels on the Crystal Springs that could redevelop.
Chris? You're looking over there all puzzled as an attorney over there.
Well, you're doing math, so. It's a little hard to, I mean, obviously this is a challenging conversation to decide what the number could be because there's too many variables that are out there that are just unknown. I do think you could, whether you set a specific number or, I mean, I'm not sure if it's even appropriate just to say that there will be a portion paid that's determined by, ITD, or it's just determined in the future based on once we get all the information from the highway district, and that's the number it's gonna be. That potentially has a really high ceiling for Mr. Larson, which he probably doesn't want. But until we get all the information, right, it's hard to know exactly what that's gonna be. So, if we can reach an agreement between the city and Larson's on a number that everybody's comfortable with today, with the understanding that whether that's a max or a minimum, or maybe just a number that we're just plugging in until we get more information, and then we come back to the table and everybody discuss it and try to figure out what it's going to be down the road. But at least you have that number, and it may be, maybe more of a midpoint that could go up or down than like say, a floor or a ceiling. But I think we can craft the language that way, just so that it's a number we have in the agreement today, and then as we get more information, then everybody agrees to come back to the table to determine what the actual number is. But it's hard, we don't have all the information. And if we want a decision tonight, then that's the process we're gonna have to go through, to kind of set a number in there that everybody can be happy with for today. That recognizing that it's probably a number that everybody needs to live with in case things don't change down the road, because it's still gonna be there as part of the development agreement. But leaving it open so that more conversations can happen in the future, as more information becomes available. That's a long answer to say, I don't know what the answer is.
So just so I'm clear, so we can't say in the developer agreement, like to be determined. We have to have a specific number. Is that clear, or is that correct?
But you could have kind of a to be determined language in there, but I think for the challenge with that, I think if you could get Mr. Larson to agree to that, then great. I think what I'm hearing is that leaves him at risk that number could be really high. But I mean, there's nothing legally wrong with having kind of a to be determined once all the information is received. That's what we're all talking about, but I think everybody's hoping that they could have something as a placeholder there so that work can go forward and people can do things without having a total unknown, if that makes sense.
So how do you feel about that?
Well, it's kind of tough because we got to give up some land and we just don't know how much at that Moyle intersection. So there's that part of the equation too. But if you look at the fact that the Barron site is already allocated 35%, across the street, I think the mayor said is 30%.
I said 30, yeah.
So 30, so that leaves 35. So I mean, if there's a cap, I would say just cap it at 35, but it's still to be determined what it's going to be because we don't know. We've got
Right.
this land and village. We got some stuff over there that's going to pay. They should pay for part of it as well. And
Right.
so we just don't know that yet.
So, Mr. Mayor, let me float this. So if we say that not to exceed 35% for Mr. Larson, and the city, if we have to actually start writing checks to build this thing, the city will cover whatever's not covered by others at that point in time, and we will assess, a latecomer agreement with those that come afterwards.
Right.
Adjusting the level of those fees to also cover the normal interest rate that the city would get from the funds that we're pulling out of savings to do this with, so the taxpayers remain whole. Would that be reasonable, do you think, and to the rest of the council?
Sean?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think you want to have it as flexible as possible because in the event that Mr. Larson decides he's going to pay for the whole thing, you'd want to be able to set up a latecomers agreement. I think we had that in the Crystal Springs apartments. Same with,
No, we didn't have a latecomers in Crystal Springs.
we didn't have the latecomers, but we had the language that would, could take care of that
Right.
if one developer wanted to
Take care of the whole thing.
take care of the whole thing, and then we would set up latecomers. So you just want to have as much flexibility in there. So I think you're going down the right path, Councilmember Keys, but
So if we were to adopt that principle and then allow staff to work with the landowners to negotiate the specific language for the development agreement, would that be agreeable to staff?
yeah, I think that would
And
work.
to
I
the
think we-
applicant?
I think we can come up with something.
Okay.
No more than 35.
Because I think you want a number because in the event that he maybe moves forward with just one part of his commercial right now, he might not be able to do all 35%, but you want to start collecting something.
Okay, and then for a question for the applicant. So this is just kind of this snake eating its own tail thing, but are you overtly open to putting an agreement in the development agreement that we can reopen the development agreement when we consider these other applications down the road? Since we can't do it tonight, because otherwise I'm not going to vote on the development agreement. So.
Did you hear what he said there, Sean and Chris? So Councilman Keys asked if there would be open to having an agreement in a development agreement that allows us to reopen the development agreement when the other applications come in.
And I think we've done stuff like that before.
Yeah, the classic agree to agree. Yeah, I mean, this is part of that, right? I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do is try to, by having this hearing tonight, right, we're trying to take up part of the application, allow things to move forward while we're waiting for some other things to occur. You could put language in there that does exactly that kind of, we agree that down the road, we agree to sit down and talk and figure it out. I always like having some language that's a little more,
Clear?
yeah, enforceable.
So I think,
Yeah, so it's doable. I mean, it's not perfect, but we've been dealing with this for the last several months, right? Where we've been working on trying to have public hearings, and we've done them in the past, and we're just not getting information from our transportation partners. And so we need to be creative, I think. And so there's room for that.
And I guess my perspective is I'm not going to vote to approve the development agreement unless we have some type of a mechanism to reopen it down the road. So.
Yeah, and I think having that language in there is good, as the mayor identified. I mean, the city on its own can't force a development agreement to be amended. It's just like an applicant can't force it to be amended. Any amendment to a development agreement is going to be a negotiated conversation between the city and the applicant. But so having language in there now that would kind of be the trigger for that negotiation to occur that's already agreed. Mr. Larson's, discussion today is very indicating it's very cooperative to have that conversation. But if for some reason he sold to somebody else and you deal with someone that's down the road that's like, we're not changing this, I'd be much happier having that language built in now.
Yeah, and again, my concern is to the original question asked earlier, that if we agree to this rezone, then we have no mechanism under the state code to put a development agreement in place if we don't do this. So.
correct.
Yeah, now's the time for the development agreement. That's correct.
Okay. Yes, sir. Go your turn. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Tim Tyree. My address is 618 West Franklin Street, Boise, Idaho. I'm an attorney here on behalf of Mr. Larson. Please don't hold the attorney against me. I too am struggling with all the math here, but trying to keep up. And my concern is on the discussion of the development agreement. So if there's a trigger for negotiation of development agreement, well, one, we get to the point of if one is not addressed tonight, if one's not imposed tonight, then we have no development agreement and everything moves forward. So it would appear, I think, that we would at least want to have a development agreement in place. And then the trigger is, okay, what is the trigger? And I suppose I'm I'm struggling to find out what is it more that we're looking for, the concerns on the development agreement. We certainly have aspects that we want to address for the residential, for example, that we would want to address in the development. For example, some of the setbacks on the residential, we need to come in and request variances on the setbacks. And that was something that we were planning on addressing in the development agreement because where the code is and because no park, anyway, long story short, there's elements that we want to come back on the development agreement. And I suppose the question I have for you, Councilmember Keys, is what is it that you're concerned about in the that also needs to be addressed in the development agreement, and that might help us understand what might be that trigger. There's also, and I'm struggling, my very bilateral mind, it's a two-party agreement, so we can't be asking for other things unless you're willing to amend it, and it kind of goes both ways. So maybe a little more understanding, we can try to fine tune some.
Sure. So without limiting myself, an example would be, we talked about a pathway and the city would be interested in having a public easement on that pathway put into the development agreement. We haven't really covered this overtly, but there's going to be a conversation about ITD proportionate share fees. That would need to be in the development agreement. And there may be other things, but that's the nature of the types of things that I think we need to talk about. So, and again, the things that you want, we're not talking about tonight. And the only way to really get those done is in the DA. So,
right.
So if we can kind of pre-agree that we're going to reopen the DA later to cover off on those things, then we can vote on the DA tonight. If not, then I can't vote on it tonight.
So we'll have a development agreement. This is how I vision this, to listen to both of you, right? We have a development agreement in place with this about the commercial component, right? The things we talked about with a clause in there that says that we'll reopen the development agreement when the hearing comes up for the preliminary plat, the conditional use and the private road. So we can add to that development agreement with whatever comes up with what you're saying about setbacks, with what Councilman Keys is talking about proportionate share and pathway easements and whatever else may come up with all the townhomes and stuff that we'll look at later.
Sure. The pathway, all of that certainly sounds a reasonable component. We've got the concern of if it's a negotiation, it's got to be both sides are agreeing to that, right? You always are concerned that things start getting taken away that we had today. But I think with the thought that we will open that discussion again for a development agreement when the rezone, or I'm sorry, not the rezone, but on the residential comes in, the preliminary plat for the residential.
Yeah, just
And during the platting process, you'd be able to address the pathway item, for example, in that as well, regardless of the development agreement. But we have contemplated the developed pathway.
sure. And I guess, would you be okay with us doing everything for the commercial with a clause that says we'll reopen the development agreement when we hear the rest of your project so we can add to it? I mean, that's all I think he's asking for.
Right.
Right.
And we'll reopen it and we'll talk about it. We're going to want to talk about it as well anyway.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, they'll have to have it because the way that this application was originally set up, the development agreement encompassed the entire development. So they can't get reductions or zero lot lines or reductions without that development agreement. So
Okay.
it will have to be reopened
But we
or
can-
modified.
Right. All right.
So I would suggest the language Councilmember Keys is requesting to have it.
Reopen it at the time of these other applications coming back. Okay. So then let's talk about the parts of the development agreement, make sure we're all clear on this, right? Mr. Paul?
Is it,
Did I hit something?
parts are we talking about?
Yeah, he doesn't need Google Earth anymore. I didn't even get there.
It's just the ones you colored, correct?
That's right.
Mr. Mayor, I'll give you my list of what I have.
Okay.
We can add to that.
Hey, listen to his list real quick, just to make sure we're on the same page for that. Go ahead, Sean.
In no particular order, we had question about two-story buildings next to Heron River in the commercial portion, west of Moyle. The height of the cupola for the gas station. Funding for the light. Prohibited uses west of Moyle. And I had an additional 5 or 6 uses that I recommended that we,
That was on your, on the,
including
And we're
brewery,
fine with that.
brewery, distillery, brew pub, wine tasting, convenience store, fabrication shop, kennel, and manufacturing plant.
on those, on the west side of Moyle.
Prohibited west of Moyle. And then no storage facilities, and I believe the mayor didn't want hospitals.
Well, if it's a for-profit, great,
So
whatever.
for-profit,
Churches.
for-profit church. and
It's
for-profit
for-profit, sure, I don't care. Just so we're not hosing ourselves. We're already upside down in our commercial to
hospital.
residential
No,
side of it
okay,
That's not the right one.
with limited, no, this isn't the right,
No,
that was their,
ours, you gotta look at.
listed, yeah.
what Sean put.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And again, Mr. Mayor and council members, when you're making.
Page 14.
You're making your motion, you can just state the
As noted in
recommended
staff.
uses in the staff report,
And
in addition.
do we have
what we're
to
adding.
establish that percentage too? Which I think 35 is fine by me, with the obvious understanding we discussed.
And then the last one my list was the agreement to reopen the development agreement with
Right.
the other applications.
So do we need to make mention about the 6 houses in this also,
Yes.
right?
So it would be, your condition would be allowance for up to 6 or 6 single-family detached residential
Right.
lots on the southwest corner of the property, rezoned property,
Okay,
per the site plan. Oh, sorry.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
I also want to add a condition that in the rezone of C2, anything that was a conditional use in 2018 C1 area would be a conditional use here as well.
It's in the C2, not the C1.
Excuse me, the 2018 C1. If it was a conditional use in the 2018 C1, it would be a conditional use in the C2 now.
I think that's.
In
what-
other words, nothing that was conditional use in back then when we made this approval would be principally permitted now. It'd still have to be a conditional use.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that's what we're here doing tonight, is pre-approving some of those uses, which is why I gave you the analysis of what would be
Correct, so.
principally permitted now versus what was conditionally
And,
used.
and part of the reason that I would like to go through the CUP is in some of those uses, we may wish to set, and we can do it all tonight, but we're gonna be here for a while. Go through things like setting hours of operation, lighting, noise, signs, all that other stuff.
So I put in the staff report, and we can make this a condition, every use is subject to a zoning certificate application, which is basically the design review, where we look at lighting, parking, and hours of operation, all that can be looked at that point,
Okay,
if you're comfortable with that.
I am. I just want to make sure that we don't
We get another look at it. I
have
agree.
something that's principally permitted that ends up being obnoxious to the community inadvertently because we didn't sharpen our pencils and look at it.
So if you look at my staff report, that's why I tried to color coordinate
You talking
some of
this?
those. So on
Tom?
page.
Just for the record, this is the weirdest public hearing I've ever been in. So.
So I think the ones that are in yellow are the ones that have a different, so,
So for example, on page 7 of my staff report, an automotive repair, which is currently a conditional use permit in the C1, is now a principal permitted use in the C2.
Oh, right here, sorry.
Bar, tavern, lounge, drinking establishment, currently is this conditional use permit, it would now be a principal permitted use, except for on the,
So you're saying those should be conditional uses,
you can make that
That-
decision tonight.
that's what I'm saying.
right?
And you guys, and that's why I highlighted those, so you guys can make that decision tonight if you want to keep those conditional,
Right. And that's what I'm asking for, is we keep those conditional.
every one of them.
That's in yellow?
From our perspective, we're certainly prohibited west of Moyle. But things like the brew pub, that's going to be a restaurant. That's, to my mind, that's what the neighbors have been asking for. I recognizing that there's a distinction in the location on some of these things. And we're certainly willing to say those are prohibited west of Moyle. But you get on the other side of the gas station, the other side of the car wash, and a brew pub is going to be that restaurant that folks are looking for. So I wanted to draw that distinction.
Right, and by the way, I hope you bring the restaurant, but my concern is that we have, let's just say pubs in town now who, some neighbors are considering to be a nuisance sometimes because of the way they operate. And those are the conditions I would like to consider when we get to that part, is if you're going to have an outdoor dining, for instance, when are we going to cut that off? Is there going to be music outside? I mean, those are the types of things that I think the council likes to consider in the CUP process. And it's not meant to create a hurdle for you. It's meant to make sure that we don't create a nuisance for them. That's my entire motivation.
Certainly fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay,
Are we clear?
So do you accept that? Like, is that
Well,
okay?
As a person who, I certainly recognize there's different types of brew pubs, right? But there's the Bardenays of the world, there's the Bitter Creeks of the world, that are great open door restaurants. You look at the one there on Eagle and State Street, right? This would be another great one to create a burden there. You already have the buffer of the car wash and the gas station. So I point that not all these things should be prohibited farther along in our.
I don't think they're
C2.
prohibited. I think they're just conditionally approved.
No, it's not intent to prohibit that.
Right.
Right.
Is that, if you're thinking we're prohibited, it's not a prohibit, it's just, it'd be a conditional use permit, so we can approve them based on what he's talking about, right?
Things like if you're going to have live music, you got to shut off 10 o'clock.
Mr.
Just the conditions under which you can operate that.
Mr.
Live
Mayor.
music outside, so.
Well, wouldn't
think
your
one of-
current noise ordinance address a 10 o'clock regardless of use, regardless of
should.
permission?
You would think it would, right? But there's more teeth.
It should say, if it was approved back in 2018 and it's a conditional use, we're totally fine with it. Everything that we've
That's all
actually,
I'm asking
everything,
for.
so that's everything that was approved back then is what we're asking for now.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, that's why if you look at my
I'm okay with
breakdown, so in 2018, the C1 uses that Mr. Larson was approved for, like a restaurant, now become a conditional use permit under the new C1, which is why he's asking for it to be
Back to a
approved,
principal
back
use.
as a principal permitted use in this new C2.
Right.
Because if you look right below restaurant, retail stores and retail services. So every retail that comes in now is going to have to do a conditional use permit when it.
Well, no, I think Michael's saying put it back to where it was. I think honestly, everybody's talking the same thing, just different lingo.
Okay.
We're in violent agreement.
And we-
just making sure that's the case.
Right.
And we have the restriction of the west of Moyle, so we're good.
Is that what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get us back to the level playing field of 2018.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then in the developer agreement, can we just list the ones from 2018
Or just state the one.
minus the storage units and?
Purchase.
Yeah.
I'm going to be forever slapped, I think, for that one, but yeah. So we're
And-
good there,
and-
Mr. Paul?
And possibly mortuary.
Isn't that?
Mortuary.
Yeah, that's included. Or, well, that might have been,
Those are for-profit, I promise.
Oh, well,
So-
that's conditional. In the old one, that is conditional, so
Right.
we would be fine there.
So I want to go through just kind of my list here.
Sean, will you listen to his list? And
Sean?
Mr. Paul, will you listen to his list?
So in the staff report, you've got a whole list of things that are prohibited uses west of Moyle. Down with that, that should be in this DA. No storage facilities should be in the DA. Mutual agreement that will reopen the DA when these preliminary plats come back before the city. I would like to, since I asked and I heard nobody oppose it, and I think it looks good, is that we grant the height exception on the cupola, that we add that in there. That we have the conditional uses that were in place in the 2018 agreement apply here. That the 6 detached houses be allowed. That we also add the conditions that are in Mr. Riggs' letter. That the stoplight contribution from the applicant be not to exceed 35%. That the city will, that Mr. Riggs and his organization will contribute 35%, and that whatever's left over that is not, by the time the bill comes due, covered by others, that the city will cover that with an interest-bearing latecomers agreement. That's what I got. What else you got?
I think there's some confusion in what you said by staff. Well, you guys both had some funny looks on your face.
And do we need to add, I think,
Always do.
I think you were asking for childcare to be permitted. Back in 2018, it was a conditional use. Do you want to request that now?
Yes, please.
So the ones that you were requesting in addition were childcare 1 through 12 and 12 and more, preschool, early learning, an event center, and a farmer's market. So those would move from conditional to allowed.
Yes. Yes, please.
So
Thank you.
making those permitted uses instead of conditional uses?
Correct.
Correct.
And I'm fine with that if the rest of council is.
I'm fine with that. More questions?
So just for clarification.
So is it gonna be a 30-acre daycare then?
For big kids.
For big kids?
So Mr.
Go
Mayor,
ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So just for clarification then, per Councilman Key's motion
Well, he hasn't made a motion yet. He just,
or proposed condition, a bar, tavern, drinking establishment that was a conditional use permit under the C1 in 2018 will still be a conditional use permit.
Correct.
Under the C2,
yes,
even though it's now permitted. Okay, that's
correct.
okay. Just want to make sure that's what you're proposing. Okay.
But a
That's what he's asking
restaurant,
for. That's what Michael's asking for.
and a restaurant like the tavern or, those other ones, those are allowed. And so that wouldn't have to go through this process. They may serve alcohol, but they also have food.
I mean, I'd go so far as to say if they don't have outdoor dining, then make it principally permitted. If they're gonna have outdoor dining, then we probably ought to look at that. So
I like that.
So you can make that a condition because it's not.
let's make,
Defined in the
let's do that. So
You all right with that, Paul? Okay.
For any restaurant or just,
Or including the bar?
Mhm.
I think so. So it would be,
if we
so
get-
we would permit the bar, tavern, drinking establishment, restaurant, as long as there's no outdoor seating. And if there is, then it would need a condition or a condition.
Right.
conditional use
Approval.
permit. It'd be a conditional use permit.
yeah. In fact, I'm thinking, heck, maybe we ought to update our ordinance and just put that in there in
Yeah.
general. So
Yeah.
So does that refer to, for example, what if we got Chick-fil-A? They have a little outdoor dining area.
But they don't serve alcohol.
So it has to be alcohol? Or
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
thinking. It's just mainly about noise and lights and, things like
Yeah.
that.
So are you
Event.
committing to a Chick-fil-A?
We're working on it.
I'll buy you an anniversary present right now if you get Chick-fil-A. Love that place.
And
Is it-
wait
is it-
wait till
is
you
it-
see what he offers you if you bring it in and out.
I won't offer you anything. I don't like them, so that's okay.
It's actually
So
Shake Shack.
did you guys get your question?
We did, Mayor, Councilmember Keys, you mentioned the conditions in the Riggs letter. The concerns we have in the Riggs letter is the timing, the conditions that those are imposed for a building permit. And it's as Paul mentioned, it's a construction item, right? When can we need to be able to construct in order to be able to fund the lighting component. So we're willing on the dedication of the right of way, and we're willing to share in an up to percentage on the light, but those other conditions create economic hurdles that are a challenge. Now, we continue to talk with Barron Properties and continue to negotiate on figuring out how we're going to make that happen. And one of the very first comments Paul made was the gratefulness of how hard the city's worked to get that light here. So we want it. We just got to figure out how to pay for it. It's no small nut to swallow. So
Well, and I look at this also that when we reopen the development agreement with the residential part of the hearing, we can condition it into there
Okay.
as well as
I'm-
timing.
I'm happy to pull it out. I think that you're all motivated to get this done because without it, you got nothing.
Yeah, I think,
ACG's not gonna let you do
no,
anything.
and I think, I mean, we can look at timing and phasing and all that stuff of the residential component, because really that's what's driving a lot of the concerns that we have more than anything, right? Oh, man. I didn't really think it was gonna take this long to get to this point, but where are we at? You guys ready to make a motion?
I have one more question.
Okay, and
Number
Sean has
anniversary-
a comment too after you're done.
What number anniversary are we on today?
36.
Well, we'll be done by 37.
Sean.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest keeping the bullet point about the applicant will continue to work in good faith to provide secondary access on State Street. I think that's an important one for
Correct.
everybody. If
Oh, the third one?
the third one.
Yes.
Okay.
Totally agree.
Okay, let's keep that in there.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant? Ms. Jennifer? Anything of staff before I close the hearing? You have any more comments before I close? I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll move on to council deliberation at this point. You're the only one that wrote anything down.
Seems like we've deliberated a lot
Yeah, I
already.
know.
And I mean, I think we've all come to an agreement, so I'm ready to vote whenever somebody makes a motion.
Mayor?
But there's a lot.
Councilman Keys,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve rezone RZ-20-12 and development agreement DA-20-28 for the Larson property with the conditions in the development agreement that we've discussed endlessly.
do we need to restate them, Sean?
I think we've
Or-
got them on the record.
You got them on record?
I'm afraid to do it again.
I'll second that.
Keep in mind, you will get it, everyone will get a chance to see
The DA.
the draft DA before
Yeah.
it comes back for approval, so.
Chris, we good with that, the way that was done?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. So please go home.
Mr. Mayor,
Go enjoy your-
just for the record.
Happy anniversary.
Go enjoy your anniversary instead of spending it with us up here.
I'd like to note for the record that we had 0 people from Heron River come and give any public testimony on this, which
Well,
shocks me.
all they sign in, we had some sign-ins. Yeah,
But there's no public testimony.
right. Will you pass that back over there for me? Okay. So we are going to, okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
just want to make sure we're doing it right, Deb.
It is 8:35. We're doing a recess at 8:35. Ms. Jennifer requested. Okay, let's try that again. It's 8:40. We're going to bring this meeting back to order. We're going to move on to item 5A, which is the second reading of the Canyon Highway District 4 City of Star Impact Fee Ordinance. Would someone like, do we need to, we don't need to make a motion or anything. We just read it, right? The second reading? Okay, so would someone like to read the second reading of that?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
I'd like to read ordinance number 342-2021.
Hey, guys.
Star Canyon Highway District Number 4 Transportation Impact Fee Code.
Okay,
An ordinance of the City of Star, Ada and Canyon Counties, Idaho, creating Article B to Title 7, Chapter 3.
hey, hang on one
Our
sec.
city code.
Hey, hang on one sec. Oh, we could pick you up on the microphones. That's the only reason why. Go ahead. Councilman Keys.
I'm going to start over. An ordinance of the City of Star, Ada and Canyon Counties, Idaho, creating Article B to Title 7, Chapter 3 of the Star City Code, creating a short title, applicability, findings and purpose, creating definitions, imposing of transportation impact fee, collecting of transportation impact fees, allowing for certain exemptions, creating an individual assessment process, creating developer credits and reimbursements, identifying the methodology for the calculations of transportation impact fees, defining extraordinary impacts, allowing for fee payer refunds, establishing for transportation impact fee trust fund and trust accounts, expenditure of transportation impact fees, allowing for appeals, protest and mediation, requiring periodic reviews, outlining an audit process, creating a joint development impact fee advisory standing committee, allowing for enforcement and collection of impact fees, adoption and authorization of a city highway district intergovernmental agreement, allowing for certain miscellaneous provisions, creating a punishment section, construction of intent of article, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Okay, that is our second reading of the Canyon Highway District 4 Impact Fee Ordinance. We will have a third reading of that and hopefully a vote on September 7th, correct? Yeah. All right, thank you, Councilman Keys. Item 5B, ordinance 344 for Cranefield. We are removing that tonight. We will not be approving that ordinance at this time, correct, Sean? Correct, okay. We're going to move on to item 5C, which is the Moyle Village Subdivision Development Agreement. Do you want to talk about this one, Mr. Sean, real quick? So if you've all read the development agreement, we just need to make a motion to approve it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
can I make a motion to do both C and D?
Can we do them both at the same time?
I think I can do both.
Okay,
those.
yep, we can sure do that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Moyle Village Subdivision Development Agreement and Moyle Heights Development Agreement.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second on both.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. We'll move on to item 5E, Keller and Associates Highway 44 Agreement. Is Mr. Ryan Morgan online, or did we lose him in his travels? He also was taking his child to school, to college.
I'm
He's up there?
online. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, so what we have in front of us tonight is, let me find it here. A scope and a budget that we put this together, I think, back in June, and are now finally getting this on our calendar to do some widening between Star Road and Canada. So, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Morgan.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure you can hear me. Hey, so will you discuss what your scope is right here, right now on this? And then I will tell you, I'll have some additions I want you to add on here as well.
Okay. Our scope is currently, are you getting that feedback or is that just me?
I think it's the metal in your head.
Okay. So our scope is currently to expand the eastbound lanes from Highbrook to Star Road, expand Highway 44 to 2 lanes going eastbound. And then we have an alternative to look at expanding those portions westbound from Star Road to Highbrook, that Albertsons and potential other developments along that, the north side of Highway 44 have not already expanded.
Correct. And we would utilize proportionate share monies to help with this expansion.
That is correct.
So what we also want to look at, just for the record there, Ryan, I don't know if this changes our pricing on here, but adding the expansion from Highbrook to Canada as alternates as well on the north and south side. We'd like to see if it's possible for us to get this entire thing completed from Canada to Star Road in one swoop.
Oh, we could definitely look at that. That's going to almost double the amount of surveying involved, as well as a couple of other items will increase. So it will impact our scope and fee, but we are happy to take a look at that and add those either to the base fee or as alternates, either way.
I thought you guys all had a copy. It's up here. It's right here. I only made me a copy. I thought you guys all did a copy of that.
I don't think I've seen a copy of that.
Well, I'll give it to you here in a sec. So you're saying, so task 2, the topographic design survey, it would double? Oh, I'm sorry.
It would,
Wanna scroll it?
yes, it would.
It's page 5. So it'll be like 34,000 instead of 17,000? Right?
Yeah, well, and if you look at the 17,000 is for the eastbound lanes only, and then the add alternate for westbound lanes, there is survey involved in there. So it would probably go closer to 45,000.
Okay. So is there a way we can approve this with those additions on there? Or do you guys want to see dollar amounts first? No, he's our city engineer. This is his design services. This is all them project managing, designing it, and all that with ITD.
I'd be willing to approve this with those items added as alternates.
Okay.
So I have a question. So this is probably, I know it's much needed, but why was this section of the highway selected to be expanded versus others?
Because this is the unfunded portion through ITD right now. The Linder Road to Highway 16 is funded for 2023 expansion. Highway 16, the Star Road is funded for 2024 expansion. This section going westbound, there is no funding available for it right now. And that's why we selected this section to hopefully get this whole entire corridor opened up for commuting for our residents here.
Okay, I thought that, I just wanted to make
No, that's
sure.
okay. It's a good question. That's a valid
Yep.
question. So,
Well, and part of why we're trying to push this forward so fast is we've had several developments that, and there was a very long public hearing not too long ago about people cutting through Pinewood Lakes, and we hope to alleviate some of that by moving this project forward.
correct. So we need to make, any questions of Ryan on this? I mean, right now, what this is for them to put together all the bid documents, and then they would work with ITD on the permitting. And then we would put it out to bid based off of their bid documents. And then you guys would have to approve that to be paid with a proportionate share of funds.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I made a motion that was something along the lines of that we are approving this number tonight, and we are approving a budgetary number of how much? Another
50 grand?
another 50 grand with a formal bid to follow, just in the spirit of moving things along in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
Do you think that would serve?
I think it would serve.
That's served fine. This is
Yep.
purely
Chris
legislative.
Chris gives us the thumbs up.
So moved.
Okay, so we got a motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. And the motion is to approve this lump sum of 129 plus 50,000 additional to
179.
give us a formal bid, so we can start moving this process along. Did you hear that, Ryan?
I did hear that. And our next public hearing is the 7th of September. Is that correct?
Correct.
We will have the revised scope in front of you at that meeting.
Okay, and you can begin moving forward though with your,
Correct.
we haven't
will get the
voted
surveys-
yet, but we haven't voted yet. I have a motion.
But yeah, we will, pending that vote, we will get the surveyor scheduled and we will start preparing all the appropriate documents.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
You've got the
Mayor,
motion and a second, Ryan? So the motion is to approve the total lump sum of $129,000 plus $50,000 additional for added budgetary for additional work for that north-south westbound portions, west and eastbound portions.
And he'll follow up with a firm quote on.
And I'll follow up with a firm quote.
and Mayor Chadwick, I have another question, sorry. Where's this money coming from in the budget?
We're going to be utilizing our savings as proportionate shares come in. We're starting to get proportionate share money that's dump in there, especially from Rosti, right, with the final plats, and that's a big chunk of it right there.
Okay.
We have $2 million committed to that fund right now, and that's why we're going to have alternates in there. So when we do the bids, we can see what the base bid is for that eastbound lanes. And then we have an alternate for the westbound between Star Road and Highbrook. And then we'll have 2 additional alternates for the east and westbound lanes from Highbrook to Canada, so we can see where that falls within the amount of monies that we have committed
Okay.
for that.
And then as a
That's okay.
as a project proceeds and we go into actually construction,
Mhm.
I mean, we go through ITD they're the expert. I mean, they know what we need or if we need something different.
So these guys,
It's
so,
not like we're building the road and
No, we're-
from our mind.
no. That's what Keller is here to design. Keller is one of the higher approved
Mhm,
ITD engineers,
mhm.
which is a beauty to have Keller on our staff. Makes it
We
really-
do a lot of ITD work throughout the state. We are, just as we are the preferred engineer for the city of Star, we are what's called a roster engineer, where they've selected 3 engineers that they can go out to without having to go through the whole process of sending this out for additional review or proposals. So we are preferred selected for multiple ITD districts. So we do this all over the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a good thing for us, and the beauty is they know how, there's like 3 different processes to get permitting, and we get to do the lesser of the 3 of that, which is
That's
awesome.
correct.
So,
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
I'd
Keyes.
just also like to add that, ITD is a partner in this, and they have
Yeah.
to approve all of this, but because we're working with them on this proportionate share thing, I expect that they're going to work with us pretty aggressively to get this done. Probably throw in a few bucks of their own to help. They're not going to fund anything like the whole thing, but when cities like Star bring money, they usually will bring a little bit also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did it answer your
Yes,
questions?
it did.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And just, I think, Ryan, you guys did the Chinden widening too, right?
We did not do the design, but we did the construction, it's called CE&I, Construction Engineering and Inspection. And so we were out there every day observing and watching and approving everything that was put in.
Okay, so we have the motion and the second, right, Ryan? You got it? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have 3 ayes?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, we're done with you. Thank you, sir.
You bet. It's been entertaining the last 200 miles listening to your council meeting.
It's like a book, right? Book on tape.
Safe travels,
That's
sir.
right.
Yeah, be safe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the item 5F, the Bruce Borup private street. So Sean, do you want to fill us in with your discussions?
Mr. Mayor and Council, at the last meeting on 8/17, you tabled this item to discuss with the applicant the ability to get an easement along the drain on the west side of the property. Ryan and I met with Mr. Borup, and he's fine with that request. So I would recommend you you add a condition of approval to the already recommended conditions, requiring a easement on the east side of the drain for future pedestrian pathway.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the private street PR-21-10 with an added condition that we, that the applicant grant the city an easement for a public pathway along the east side of the Lawrence Kennedy Canal, assuming that the city has need of that section for a connected pathway.
Okay, was the east side the correct side?
I'm sorry, west side. Did I
West
say, did I
side.
say east? I meant the west
It's
side.
the east side of the canal, west side of his property.
No, it'd actually be the west side of the canal up against the sewer district property.
So if we did that, the rest of the pathway would have to go through sewer district property, which they're not down with.
Yeah, but if you look at, if you look at the topo,
What-
let's do this. Let's just make it along the drain, and we can work with the because he didn't care which side
Okay,
it was.
so I
I
guess,
looked at
I guess
the aerial
it's-
and it looked like the west side was the appropriate thing because then you'd be able to get out on Tempe if you needed to.
okay.
You get-
I guess it's the side where the ditch company uses the easement, because that's really where we want to be. So whatever side that is.
Okay, and staff would recommend up to 20-foot easement, wide easement.
Okay,
Okay, I amend my motion accordingly.
I second that.
okay, we got a motion and a second. Do we have a correct motion, Ryan, on what? Ryan Field? Let's make sure that what's correct.
We're going to secure the easement for, sorry. So we're going to secure an easement for the pathway along the back of his property in the current irrigation district easement, not to exceed 20 feet in width. That sound correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. On the item 5G, Land and Village, we need to table this one indefinitely as well.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman,
I move that we table Land and Village. Do I need to read all those?
let's read them just
Okay.
so we're safe.
AZ-20-04, developer agreement 21-14, preliminary plat 20-04, PUD 20-03, and PR-21-07.
Okay, we got a motion, you said table indefinitely,
Yeah,
correct?
yes.
We have a motion to table Land and Village.
I'll second that motion.
Indefinitely, and we have a second. Any further discussion? Again, this is being tabled until we get our transportation items in hand. Okay, we got a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item 6, we can just do reports here. Chief, you got a report? Okay, Ms. Councilwoman?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make a short little report. As the council liaison to the Parks, Art and Beautification Committee, I want to announce tonight that Jerry McCorkle, she will be the new chair. And she's been serving as a vice chair of the committee for over a year. We'll be meeting soon. I want to continue meeting so that we can, move forward with our projects. I'd also like to say, like everyone else in our community, I'm extremely saddened and shocked and at a loss of words about the recent shooting of the dog Stanley. My heart is heavy for the owner, and I know many others in our community are feeling the same. I've seen some ideas on social media about creating a memorial for both Stanley and Dixie at the new dog park that's coming. I think it's a great idea. There's been talk about a GoFundMe page, but I would like to say before that is done, maybe contact the city and see what the plans are. If there's any plans, I believe Trevor might have something. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. Completely support it. Lastly, you know, our community's experienced some very difficult times lately, and I just very proud of the way, you know, people come out and comfort each other and all the support from our community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Keys.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to echo Councilwoman Solomonson's sentiments and potentially propose that the Parks Committee contemplate ways to memorialize the situation. I'm not so certain that naming the park is the best way to do that, but I think if the committee came up with a reasonable proposal, potentially working with the community and brought that to the council, that may be a great way to move forward. That's all I'm going to say for that for now. Going on to the rest of my report, I did meet with the Star Sewer and Water District at their monthly board meeting on Friday. Their plant south of the river, anybody who's driven on Star Road knows that that's under construction. At this point, they're anticipating probably a January-ish opening. They're not ready to put a date on it yet, but they're kind of first of the year-ish. And they're thinking that the west plant, the Kingsbury plant, is probably out at this point about a year from now.
So let me ask you a question on that. So is that construction going to happen all the way till January along Star Road, or is that going to be ending soon? Because I know there's a lot of concerned parents right now with the Waihee High School and stuff opening.
All I know is that that's when they told me the plant would open, but I know that there's still a lot of work that once they get off of Star Road, they still have a bunch of plumbing to do. Excuse me, to get the connection done into their plant. I believe that the longest construction effort is not actually on Star Road itself, but on the bridge. There's some boring that has to be done under the bridge that they believe is going to be quite time consuming, and that the bridge itself may be down to one lane for an extended period of time.
Oh, wonderful.
So, I mean, what they're doing along the road is going to happen pretty well. I mean, the good news is that, the bridge is a pretty finite length and they won't be closing hundreds of yards of it.
Right.
The bad news is it's going to be for a long time.
Okay.
I also, Mr. Mayor, with you attended a meeting of the Canyon County Board of Commissioners working on a process to expand our current area of impact. We're making progress. I think that the city of Star is making a good impression on the commission because we're always showing up prepared, probably way more prepared than they ever think we will. But yeah, that's how we roll.
That's how we roll.
Yeah.
And that's thanks to Councilman Keys typing away.
And Mr. Mayor, that's all the comments I have for now.
Okay. Councilman Hershey?
Yes, the Historic Committee is actually going to meet this Thursday at 6 p.m. here. It's moving along. And I can just only echo the sentiments heard by my fellow council on the recent events. Nothing more I can add. It's just very sad. Thank you.
So I will just tell you we had a lady come in and bring me a whole stack of not necessarily Star-related history, but a history from back in World War II era of newspapers and all that kind of stuff that might be interesting for the committee too. So it's kind of
Break it out on Thursday.
it was really cool actually to see that stuff. Okay, staff, anything for you guys? No? Miss Dana? I didn't ask you. Back in the corner. All right, so just to echo what Councilman Key said, our committee of 9 we're making progress. which is nice. And it sounds like we've had some of the landowners there come in and talk to the city since our last meeting, which is even better for us. And I think we're almost to the point of getting a motion, I think, of some kind for an area of impact on the Canyon County side. We have some things to work out, I think, on that, some discussions to have before we will accept that, I guess, right? But it only takes 5, right? 5 out of the 9 to approve it. And then when it gets approved, it goes to the county commissioners to adopt, and then it comes to the city council to adopt. And then I think they have to work with Middleton to try to pull theirs back. If they refuse to pull it back, then it goes to, does it go to judicial review first? Well, but if they won't accept that. Because there's
I can't remember if it goes to judicial review first or if it goes to election.
or an election of the landowners in dispute in that area. So it's been quite a interesting process, to say the least, right? I only left my knife in my pocket one time trying to get through the county courthouse, so that didn't work so well. So just to let you guys know, Matt Vrasper did resign from the committee today. There is, I have an idea, we talk about the memorialization, we have a dog park coming online. We have a small dog section and a big dog section. So it's even possible that we can look at calling one side the Dixie section for the small dog and the other side the Stanley section if we need to, right? So we can talk about that, but there's some time to look at that and see where we're going with that, so. Any questions of me? There's a lot going on. ITD, I've been working with them, talking. I mean, it just seems like there's a ton going on in this town right now.
Mr. Mayor, so last year, the council authorized and we with city purchased some software to help us automate our inspection and building process.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on how that's coming along?
Yep, we do have that software. It's available to go live, but we're trying to, part of it was not available to go for us. And so with this Black Mountain software, I think there's some integration with that. That's working there. So we could go live pretty quick. It just depends on where the cross is for the accounting portion of that. Okay? So, because the accounting portion there's 2 pieces to that, right? The inspection side where people have always had to call in, right? Where they will now be able to go online. And then the other side of it is the financial pieces where we had to sit there and manually input all the financial pieces of every single inspection that came in. I think we're ready to go with the one side of it, just not the other, not the financial piece of it. So, but our inspectors are doing it all electronically now. So there's none of that paper being done and passed around. They're all doing it right off of their stuff out there in the field, which is nice. So, okay. Anything else? No? All right. It is 9:08. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. Sorry. I'm not adjourning yet. September 28th, we're doing a State of the City address. Just so everybody's aware, it's going to be at Life Springs Church at 7:00. Right? I would get absolutely things thrown at me from the back room if I don't mention that. But September 28th at Life Springs Church at 7 p.m. we'll do the State of the City address. All right? So